Hello and welcome to this Retfurb video. Today we've got a set of Technics speakers SB-F920. As you can see, these speakers have had quite a bit of use. They got damage to the centre of the cones and the front grills are also damaged. So both of these are going to be replaced, and generally they're just untidy, so we're going to go around, clean them up and just sort out any bits of damage on them. Let's get to the video. So the first thing we're going to do is just clean the main case off, just to get rid of some of the grime on there. Obviously you can see where the speaker grills go into the main casing. There's some sort of brown residue which I think is caused by smoking. They do smell a little bit smoky, not that bad, but they do smell like someone could have been smoking around them. So once we've cleaned them off, hopefully that will go. I know sometimes it's hard to get rid of the smoky smell on some of the audio equipment. I've had amplifiers and stuff before which even after you clean them right out they still smell a bit horrible. So let's give them a wipe down and then we'll go from there. So now that the speaker's all wiped down, we can now look at replacing this centre dust cap cover on the cone. I'm using a sharp blade to do this, just carefully cutting round the cone. Now if you're using a blade, you don't want it too long, you don't want it to go in too far and potentially cause damage to anything underneath. So I've just got it on a very short setting, or just going in very short into the dust cover on the cone around the edges, being careful not to catch any of the other part of the cone. If you do this, you'll cause damage. So you just need to carefully go around, even if it means taking the middle part off first and then working back round, taking a bit more off at a time. You don't need to get rid of the whole lot of it, you can leave a little bit, which you'll see that I do in a minute. So that's the bulk of the cone dust cover removed. Now we can just carefully go around and just trim some more off. I can't stress enough the importance of caution on this. You don't want to damage any other part other than taking this little bit off. You just need to go around very carefully trimming it off, not damaging any part of the other part of the speaker. So now I've got a replacement dust cap here that I'm just going to try on just to see how it fits before I trim more off. Now I will need to take a little bit more off, as you'll see. So now that I've just gone round trimming all the excess off as much as I can, now I'm going to try on the cone dust cover again just to make sure that it fits okay. And as you can see from that quick test, it looks like it's going to fit all okay, so now we can look at getting that glued in place. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to use some spray contact adhesive, but not spray it directly onto the cone dust cover. I'm going to spray it into a tray first. I'm then going to use something to put it around the edge of the dust cover and then apply it to the actual cone. I think doing it this way just prevents any sort of overspray of the can. I think just doing it this way, that it'll prevent any overspray going on things that I don't want it to go on. As you can see then, when I was spraying it in the little tub at the back, it sprayed over the side, so you can only imagine what would have happened if I'd done that trying to get it onto the speaker itself or trying to get it onto the cone dust cover. It would have been everywhere. So back to what I'm doing at the moment, I'm just using the end of a brush, not the bristle end, just the other end. And I'm just putting the spray contact adhesive around the edges of the dust cover, just carefully putting it around, not too much. You want enough obviously for it to stick, but just a nice even amount all around the edges. And now that the glue's been applied on the dust cover, we can now place it onto the cone itself and get it fixed into position. The contact adhesive will allow a certain amount of moving around. Obviously if you leave it too long it will stick and it won't be able to be moved very easily, so you want to try and get it in position as quickly as you can. If you apply the dust cover quicker after applying the glue, it will allow it to be moved more than if you let it dry on the dust cover before fitting. I'm just using this tool to go around the edges to make sure they're stuck down properly. So that's the speaker dust cover done, and the unit's been wiped down. We can now move on to the next stage. Obviously both speakers go through the same process as this one, so I'm not going to show them both being done, but both the processes will be the same for both speakers. So now let's move on to wiping the rest of the case off and then sorting out some of the damage around the edges. Now that we've finished wiping down the whole of the case, we can look at touching in all the damage around the box. So all I've done here is just sprayed some black paint into the lid, and I'm going to use a brush just to touch in the areas. Obviously it's not going to look brand new, but it will just cover and hide and take your eye off the area which is obviously exposed underneath, where the wood underneath shows through the black outer covering on the speaker. Once the paint dries, it will look a lot less gloss and it will blend in better. So obviously in the video at the moment it might look like it stands out more, but once it does dry it will lose that sheen and then it will blend in the back areas and you won't hardly notice it. So now just having a final check, make sure that I've got everything and just final touch-ins, and now we can move on just to wipe it off and then get ready to do the speaker grills. You can see already from what I've done that it looks a hell of a lot better than what it did when we started. So now let's move on to the speaker grills. First thing I'm going to do is give them a quick hoover off and a quick wipe down before we go any further. So now that both grills have been hoovered, we can remove the badge first. This is just stuck on in most cases. Obviously you just need to check this because sometimes it might have little clips on the back, but on this particular model it's just stuck on. So now to make it easier, I'm just going to make a cut into the front of the grill, just obviously making sure not to cut any of the plastic in behind. This is when I come to realise that the blade I'm using is pretty blunt, so in a minute I will snap a bit off. You won't see it, but I'll snap it off before I go any further because it just makes it hard work this way. And then that way it'll be a nice fresh blade to cut through all the other bits. Now here I'm just proceeding to peel the mesh off of the frame. This is pretty simple, to be honest. On this grill it's coming off quite easily. It's only just obviously old glue on there, which is allowing it to come off easier than what it would if it was fresh glue. So yeah, this is just a case of peeling it off now. Now that the material has been removed from the frame, we can look at cutting the new piece of material the right size before we go any further. This is the material I got, which is actually on Amazon. It isn't an exact match of what came off, but it is a nice looking speaker grill. So it will give like an OE finish to it. Admittedly not exactly the same as what was on there before, but once it's done it will look good still. So with this fabric you will stretch it over, so you can cut it fairly close to the edges, although I'm allowing a little bit extra and probably the best way to do it. But it will stretch quite a bit, which is what you want to do when you come to fitting it. Not overstretch it, but you just want to stretch it so it's sort of taut around the front of the area. So with this grill now, I'm just going to mask it up any bits I don't want the glue to get on. I'm going to be using spray glue, just a normal standard spray glue, contact adhesive, which will be ideal for this sort of application. But I want to cover up as much as I can so I don't get too much glue everywhere. Because I want to keep it so localized, this is the way I've decided to do it. The spray glue I'm using is just from Screwfix, just a basic spray contact adhesive. So now the masking tape's in place, you just carefully spray some adhesive around the edges. Now with this nozzle it sprays like a line, so if you just keep it orientated so the line is in line with the grill, then it will mean that less spray glue will go elsewhere. Now that the glue's been applied, we can remove the masking tape. Now at this point we can lay the new material down on the surface and get ready to apply it to the grill frame. I'm going to attach one side first and then I'll be able to pull it over to the other side. So when you're attaching it down onto the contact adhesive, you just give it a light bit of pressure to start with, just to make sure that you've got it in the right place before final fixing. So at this point I'm just going to fix the main side section and leave the corners. Now that we've got one side fixed, we can now turn it around and start on the other side. So now you need to put on the fabric as you stick it down on this side, but as you do it you just need to watch as it's creasing on the front. Obviously if you pull it and stick it down in the wrong place, the front will leave creases, so you need to do it in such a way that it pulls it taut and leaves it nice and flat. Here you can see I'm just turning it over just to check how taut the front is, and as it is now, this is perfect. I can now get this side stuck down firmly. So there may be times whilst you're doing this that you have to lift it up and put it back down again, and most of the time it will stick down fine, but occasionally you might find that you have to put more glue on there. So don't be scared to do this, just obviously when you do it, just make sure you cover up any areas you don't want the glue to go on. Otherwise you run the risk getting the spray on the front of it or on the sides or any sort of front facing area which you're going to see. Now at this point you can see that I'm working on the corner, so as you do this you need to pull it tight from both angles. If you don't, you'll get creases on the front of it, so you sort of pull it round as you're sticking it down from both top and side point. Alternatively, instead of spraying the glue on, you could spray the glue into like a little pot and then use something to apply the glue that you've sprayed in the pot onto the area. Even something like the end of a cocktail stick or the end of a brush, or even a brush. But if you don't want to ruin it, just use the end and just dab a little bit around that area. So you'll see on the part that I've just done that it stuck down before I wanted it to. So you can see that there's a bit of glue that's come off onto the mesh. So this doesn't need to be worried about because you'll cut that section off anyway when you stick it down, because the material will have to be stretched over, so that bit will be on the excess part. You can also see that I'm now applying a little bit more glue in the area and just making sure that no glue's gone on any of the parts by the way I've masked it and the way I'm spraying it. I'm just working around the edges, just making sure it's all stuck down okay. Obviously if you do get a part which is not stuck down quite as well, you can dab a little bit of super glue in that area as well, just to hold it down once you've trimmed it, so it's not a big deal. So now that all the mesh has been stuck onto the frame, we can now look at trimming off all the excess. Obviously again, care needs to be taken here because you don't want to go through with the blade and cut any of the front section or any of the bits that you're going to see. So we just need to carefully cut onto the back of the frame through the mesh and just remove any sections of the mesh we don't need. And as you can see, after it's trimmed and flipped over, you can see just how good it looks now with a new fresh piece of mesh material on there. Now we can look at replacing the badge back onto the new mesh. All I'm going to do here is just going to measure it all out, make sure I've got it central, make sure I've got it roughly in the right height, similar to what it was before. And then I'm going to use some super glue on the back of it and then stick it down. Obviously, whilst you're doing this, you don't want to move it around once the super glue's on there. You need to make sure that you're fixing it in that correct location. So using the masking tape and marking the central position, you can leave the masking tape on there, work out what the central position is on the badge as well, and then stick it down in one go, and then it needs to be left. It will stick pretty quick on there anyway, but what I'm saying is you don't want to put the badge on and then move it around while you're trying to glue it, because you'll just make a mess of it and you'll get glue all over the parts you don't want to. So now the badge is stuck pretty quick on there. If I tried peeling it off now, it would damage it, so the glue does go off quite quick on this occasion. I've just used a standard type super glue, this one again from Screwfix. I'm not sure if any other countries have Screwfix, but this is in the UK. So as you can see, that speaker grill is now finished. It's come out really well, I'm really happy with it. So what I'm going to do is skip past the whole process of doing the second one, but I'm just going to show putting the badge on, just to show you what I do to measure up the two to make sure the badge is in the right location. So just putting the masking tape next to it, I measured it the other one. Again, just getting that in the right area before I put the super glue on the badge and then fix that down. And now that the grille's all done, we can fit it back onto the main box, and that's it, all finished. I think you'll agree they look really good, they've come out really well, the grills look brilliant, the case looks good, and the cones are back to how they should be, so hopefully now they'll live on for many more years to come. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video, it's really appreciated. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.